All right. Here we are once again. Myself, Sigma Jargon, and my good friend Cancel to discuss Worm, chapters 5 and 6 of Arc 11, Infestation. A pleasure as always to be on the stream.
Yeah, and I almost have that stream link out there, and...
Oh, you'll be surprised some folks leap in immediately.
Indeed. Okay.
Let me click on the link myself so I can have the chat up.
So, cool. Yes, 11.5 and 11.6 from Infestation. As a reminder, we want to set stuff to live chat, even though for some reason it still filters half my messages. So, Greg, if you see something I totally miss, definitely point it out.
Yeah. Thinking of which, not right now, but sometime later I'll want to look at your channel settings and see if I can make them more permissive.
That's a good idea. Anyway, so, as a reminder to the audience participation question was for 11.6, discuss Taylor's interaction with Charlotte. I guess it happens in 11.5 as well, but generally, these two chapters, how she interacts with Charlotte.
Yep, there's a bit in each chapter.
Yes. So, for themes, I think definitely Taylor's complex about bullying comes up, and it's the bullying like triad: bully, victim, and bystander.
Yeah. Although Taylor almost accuses Charlotte of, because she's a bystander, she really sort of aided and abetted the bullies in a way. I think I'll have some words to say on that when we get to the actual audience discussion question, though.
For sure.
Another theme I think would be societal collapse. We get to really sort of see the rot that set in as a result of some of the gangs gaining more power in the city, particularly the merchants in these chapters, of course, but you can imagine it being particularly bad in this circumstance, but also a problem in areas controlled by, say, the Empire 88.
2 + 4 × 5, driving to work as always. Hello.
Welcome.
I agree with you there. Vic is here, but AFK. Yeah, the societal collapse theme, I talk about it a little in my post-chapter thing as well as during the chapter. It's that they really lean on that the post-disaster thing, which, I mean, more or less happens in real life, but it's usually just the heightened experience of it being a book and it being parahumans in particular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's kicked to a whole nother notch.
Yeah. So, I don't have much more to say on the themes. I was gonna jump into the chapter. Oh, hey, Val. So yeah, 11.5. This chapter starts with Taylor's group, sort of finally nearing the mall. They're trying to enter under the cover of being merchants, like we discussed last time. So they are not wearing their costumes. They're just out in the open with their 4, mercenary guys, who are, of course, also dressed up like grungy rejects. Vic says, the merchants feel really Trumper. I wonder if Wildbow based them off of some group at the time. I might be short-sighted, but I didn't think things got so extreme till 2015 or whatever.
I'm not certain I see it necessarily. They aren't really like... They are very clearly narcissists, especially in terms of the leadership, but they aren't really the sort of nationalist movement you'd expect from that sort of same feel. It just feels sort of like his vision of a superhuman druggy gang, essentially.
Yeah, I guess the thing in fictional media that it feels the closest to is like a, I don't know if less extreme, just slightly different version of like the RoboCop 2 nuke cult. Nuke was the name of the drug
Ah,
that they took.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
That nuke cult was really bonkers. Vale says it's nice writing method to access post-apocalyptic setting, having apocalyptic event generating characters like Endbringers. Um,
Yeah, and the cool thing about Endbringers in particular is they allow you to sort of have a localized apocalypse where Brockton Bay has been just devastated, but the country and the world as a whole are carrying on mostly.
hmm hmm yeah, it's, I mean, it's very, I think it's directly based off like Hurricane Katrina, where like a lot of the like things that seem beyond the pale, like people coming from outside the city to come like kill people there, literally
Mm-hmm.
happened in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. Like there were white supremacists who came there to like hunt people.
Yes.
So, um, they had to actually form like kind of the stuff that Taylor like sets up later, where she's got like a gang of people who have guns so that they can fight back when the like chosen show up, who are the most equivalent to the like real life people who did that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the merchants, the merchants are a little different because like I can't think of a real life like out like similar group in like the Katrina situation, but anyway. Um.
No, yeah, I think it's just really that in the wake of Leviathan, a lot of the shackles sort of come off of them.
Mm-hmm.
Where before they were held down by polite society not tolerating their shenanigans. But
Yeah.
now that everything's gone to shit, they are just having a wild old time of it and being really awful.
And Vic says, I guess I mean the merchant non-parahumans just being crazy because they can now. Um, yeah, I mean, I totally see what you mean. Like, if you're thinking of like the Jan 6th thing with people breaking into the Capitol and stuff, they're kind of like a seemingly completely unaffiliated like bunch of, because I mean like the variety of different crazy like right wing people that showed up at Gen 6 was pretty broad, to be honest. Like commitment to the cause, like amount of, I don't know, actual like thought throughedness, like all these different like factors are like totally different levels for everybody who's there.
Mm-hmm.
Um very mob tactic. But Vale says there is a moral tier, the lowest tier, which acts in a certain way because if they don't, they will be caught and punished. The merchants are wholly that sort. Yeah, yeah. I think that's really true. Where their morality is coming from only the constraints of society and not from an inner like understanding of other people's autonomy and agency being important.
Yeah, one thing I'll note that's particular to this setting that wouldn't be true in real life or something similar is that a movement like the merchants would fizzle out very quickly in real life because their attrition rate is horrendous. We see in these chapters just a astronomical number of people get injured, die
Yeah,
in
like
the course of
it's
this
really
one
unclear
night.
how many people die in that circle, but like I wouldn't be shocked if like 80 or 100 people all died down there. If you told me it was more, I wouldn't even be surprised cuz like who's to say that like anyone is like they're not getting medical care after this?
That's what I was thinking too. Like even if you're just injured, the city is not in a good state to handle a whole bunch of injured people. It's absolutely filthy. It's waterlogged. Bugs are everywhere, as Taylor can attest. The medical facilities and supplies aren't there to deal with them, and even if they were, the merchants aren't in best position to really go to the hospital and get taken care of. So a lot of people who are just injured, who get scratched or whatever else, are going to get infected, grow ill, it's the knock-on effects from this one night are going to be catastrophic. But the merchants, unlike real life, can sort of hold it together because they have that power structure at the top that is so powerful that they can magnetically pull people in and keep them in line.
Yeah. It's what I was thinking of when we were talking about it earlier is that this is an event that's almost like because of the parahumans, it's something that wouldn't necessarily be possible in real life, but is totally believable as soon as you add in that factor.
Mm-hmm.
Vic says it's actually like that first game in Squid Game. Only 5 people died.
Yeah, you saw that people being gunned down. Nope, sorry.
Oh, you saw 90% of the people die? Well, it was less than half. You're just bad at counting, actually. Um. Anyway.
And you could just imagine if Squid Game had come out before this, Skidmark would fucking love the idea of running his own shitty Squid Game.
That would be like his ultimate work, yeah.
Except for it be the Skid Game.
Oh god. Yep. Total Skid Games. He does it really badly and everyone dies in the first game and he's like, fuck. Oh my god. Vale also says Skid Game. Alright, so hopping into it, the first paragraph of the chapter describes the construction equipment, and I actually thought it's been like commandeered and redecorated by the merchants. Made me think of the trashed school and like their school statue of like I guess it was supposed to be the founder of the school probably, but it was all like defaced with spray paint and bras and children's toys, exactly like was described here. So made me think of that. They took time to affix shitty spikes to one of the scoops, as though they thought they would actually use this construction equipment to like spike people to death.
I actually respect that. They are leaning into the Mad Max.
They're
fantasy.
going full Mad Max, yeah.
Squeak isn't doing it, but the rank and file merchants, they know what's good.
Exactly. Vale, not only did we beat you by a tenth of a second, but I'm gonna say the dumbest correction ever. That damn it actually has 2 M's and no N's.
Oh my god.
Weird.
We're getting pedantic up in here.
It's a weird word, but damn it and damn are not spelled the same way. Anyway. As the scene description continues, we hear that there are lookouts sitting on rubble and piles of trash. And they must be really happy with their lives and their choices up to now, being a lookout, sitting on a pile of trash.
That's a high tier job in the merchants.
Exactly. Golly gosh darn it is my new go-to. Oh, okay. Golly gosh darn it, fuck. The atmosphere at the mall is terrible. It's loud as fuck, and all these kinds of overlapping music. Past that, there are a bunch of people that are all trying to yell over the music at each other. And it's got only the best smells, like burning plastic and rotting meat.
And a bunch of unwashed people.
Oh, yeah.
Yum.
Well, I mean, the unwashed people are like a nice spice on top, but you can't smell them all the time because of the 2 primary flavors.
Well, yeah, but the mix is what's important here. You gotta have the proper blend of horrible smells.
Making a good point. The group gets up to the building, and the doorman is giving out wristbands to each of them, when a second doorman bouncer type uses the good old F slur to try and refuse Ja and Brooks. Then Lisa signals to Ja, who immediately beats up 2 guys. Then, the guy hands them their wristbands like it's no big deal, and they're in. Because at a merchant's gathering, it's more suspicious to not get into fights than to get into fights. So he's just like, this seems like average behavior.
One of the things I sort of noticed here is it sounds like the wristbands are essentially just rubber bands.
Mm-hmm.
Like colored rubber bands. Are like, here, have a shitty red rubber band.
Yeah, it sounds like it's like a produce rubber band, or maybe like one of those that you'd get off a rubber band ball. Yeah, silly bands. That's fine too. It's your choice of shitty little thing.
Well, you don't want the produce ones. You don't want to have romaine lettuce on your wrist.
No,
You'll be
that's
looked down upon.
it's very unmacho to have romaine lettuce. Um, Unless your name's Romaine, then maybe it works.
Yeah.
But let's see here. Taylor notes with her bug brain that it's 20% and rising percent of this population in the mall that have body lice. And now they're inside. It's dense with people. There's a lot of casual physical violence going on here. People are buying and selling drugs and weapons and other people, what have you. There's a constant undercurrent that if a group isn't big or well armed enough, then another group there is just going to attack them wildly for all their stuff. So it's just like a constant, slow going fight, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
um. Vic says this silly band is actually a knife. Yeah. Vale. The merchant's first day in operation, they used scrunchies until somebody pointed out what they actually were.
Yeah, they were really getting into the Heather's mood with those red scrunchies.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. A merchant who is more like a literal merchant tries to sell a person to Miner and won't let it go when he tries to move past. Lisa ends up buying fancy named ecstasy to make it look like they fit in, and Taylor's clearly freaking out about the idea that she might be getting high in a place like this. Or at all, really. But Lisa says, "Trust me," and then gives Taylor and Brooks and herself each a pill. And then I took this quote here. Yeah, feel free to read the quoted text.
Obediently, I opened my mouth.
See, the Taylor-Lisa shippers really needed something to work with, so we had to have this line.
Oh, yeah. Oh my goodness. I didn't even think about it.
And then Lisa whispers to Taylor that she switched the pills. Again, giving something to the shippers as they put their heads in together and lean together as they walk. Just a few. But then Taylor is annoyed. I think if they were together, Taylor would constantly be annoyed. It's just like if you shipped Lisa and Brian. Like, Brian would be annoyed the whole time. It's just part of the ship.
I don't know what the official name is, 2 + 4 = 5, but I in my brain immediately thought Scattletail.
No! That's terrible. Skittertail is way better.
No, I'm going for the shitty version, because of course.
Oh boy. And then, yeah, Vic says she has to de-stress by saving one person. The worst part of Worm is that we never see Taylor get high and or drunk. I was so disappointed when it was a sugar pill. Tattle Keto. Oh boy. That's all our new mission is to come up with all the ship names for all the characters combos.
Oh boy. Well, I imagine you can have some end of arc thing. We just put together a huge list and be like, okay, here we go, this big list.
Yeah. In this arc, Smugbug. Oh, that's the best.
Okay, Smugbug is pretty good, but
how about Earwig? Oh, that's good. Yeah. So we got 2 + 4 × 5 with Smugbug and Vic with Earwig. I think those are my top two right now. Although I do like Tattle Keto. It's not exactly Skitter's name, but the idea that she's represented by the mosquito is funny. Anyway. Moving on. The group passes more salespeople and hangers-on before they get to a main section of the mall with the collapsed roof. That's where things are truly happening.
People were dancing, fighting, clustering in groups, or chanting, sometimes 2 or 3 at a time.
I don't know why I found this so funny, but the idea that they're dancing and chanting and fighting in a group.
Mm-hmm. I especially like chanting and fighting at the same time. That's classy.
Yeah. 2 + 4 × 5 has to clock in. Bye!
So long.
Taylor shows the group the picture of Bryce.
We're looking for this guy.
The group breaks up a bit. Brooks and Jaw heading off to find Bryce, and the Taylor, Lisa, Miner, and Senegal group are staying together. They beeline around looking for Bryce, trying to avoid all the random fights breaking out. they come upon a ruined storefront of a women's clothing store in which different women are taking off and putting on clothes that are thrown at them. The women on the stage are more or less trapped by a crowd of merchants who are kind of held at bay by their own crabs in a bucket type response, trying to hurt anyone who tries to get on stage. Um, uh,
Yeah, anyone goes up, they just drag him back down and beat him up.
yeah, so that's the kind of equilibrium right now. Most of the women on stage seem to have glazed over eyes like they're really high or something. And in the middle of this drug fueled, bad version of burlesque, Taylor spots a teenage girl who looks more like a victim to her, and she demands to Lisa that they save her. I think it's only fair to mention that all of the women on stage are pretty equally victims in the situation, even if some of them are more like drugged up and or playing along with the situation. But Taylor's weird about drugs.
I think
Um,
it's a combination of being weird about drugs, and I'm not certain about the age of the other women on stage, but Charlotte is Taylor's age. Like she can sort of see herself in Charlotte, I think, in this moment.
true, true. Um, but I just think that Taylor kind of writes off the other women.
Yes, she totally does.
And then Lisa tells Taylor that they can't save all the people who are here, saying there are like hundreds of people who need help, or at least 100 people who need help. And then,
We should help her. You've got a little superhero showing through there.
yeah. Taylor isn't rattled by this, though, and she threatens that she'll blow her cover and use her power openly if she has to. Lisa capitulates and has Miner go over and grab the girl and distract the crowd by throwing money and pills over them, which gets them into a frenzy fighting over the loot. The girl starts screaming as she's carried off by Miner. And as he's joining the group, then Lisa grabs the arm of an old man who is trying to stab Miner. It's just a very chaotic environment. Taylor kicks him in the knee. He dropped the
He
knife.
dropped.
Or, sorry,
Oh,
you do it. I was just jumping in too quick.
he dropped the knife, and it skittered along the floor to the boundary of the crowd.
And as my own notes say, Skittered!
Oh my God!
Yeah,
It's destiny.
destiny. Vale says Arachnag, the evil ship, and then Taylor might have a thing for helping a person in a helpless situation who is around Taylor's age and is giving visible indications of needing help. Yeah, I know. I just think she's a little narrow in her view of the situation. Um,
Sure, but I can appreciate that. Like, it's better to help one person than to help no
Zero
people.
people, yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah. Taylor gets the knife, and then she and Senegal help to cover their retreat. She's just like waving around, flailing. She's like Roberto the robot. Um, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
having to fight the big dudes and Knife Girl was too much of a hassle compared to scrabbling on the ground for the distraction loot from before. As the group makes their way to a quieter portion of the mall where the bathrooms used to be, Taylor loses a little bit more of the small amount of faith in humanity that she had had, and wonders to herself if some of the people were people that she had passed on the street in the past who had joined the merchants after the city had broken down. Uh,
Yeah,
mhm.
Brockton Bay is not in a great situation. This is one of those cases where you can't super blame people because having a community of any sort helps, and having people who can at least somewhat protect you in the face of disaster helps. But the merchants are really the worst of the bunch.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not the majority of them, but some people in the merchants did come from outside of the city to Brockton Bay after the disaster, much like the Slaughterhouse 9 did.
Mhm.
So, they suck. Um, Fail says Taylor rescues someone from having their own personal trauma locker. Having that singular focus is a weakness in some ways, but she does consistently help individuals who are stuck in trauma lockers. Yeah, yeah, it's true. Um, They reach the spot they'll have the most privacy, and there's a couple having sex out in the open, and three drunk, nearly passed out teenagers slumped against a wall, but this is as good as it gets. Minor puts down the girl who we learn in a little bit is Charlotte, and she shrinks back. Lisa and Minor try to reassure Charlotte that she's safe for now, but when she tries to thank like either of them, then Lisa directs Charlotte to Taylor, and she hugs Taylor tight. Then Lisa sends Minor off to stand guard with Senegal.
I hugged her back, reflexively, a little shaken. Why had it taken this long for someone to say that simple thing to me? I'd wanted to be a hero once upon a time. I
Yeah.
didn't do anything. Thank you.
Taylor's a little nonplussed and just stands there letting Charlotte hug her for a moment.
Do you want to actually swap off? You want to be Taylor or Charlotte?
I want to be Taylor because she has less lines, and right down here you'll get to read the bigger chunk.
Okay, then. Oh my god.
What?
You went to Winslow High.
No.
Yes, you're the locker girl.
Charlotte is pretty out of sorts, but she really puts her foot in her mouth here and does not know when to stop talking. First she says that she didn't recognize her without her glasses, then she's shocked that she's with the merchants now. Taylor tells an obvious lie. You're thinking of the wrong person. But Charlotte doesn't take the out.
No, I'm almost positive. You were that girl that got shoved in that rank locker with all that stuff they carted away in biohazard bags. The girl who went so mental they had to have a group of cops and paramedics haul you away for the first month of the semester.
Enough! I shouted, surprised at my own temper. Yeah.
Yeah.
Charlotte's really a great conversationalist, having no problems right now. Anyway.
Okay, you remember that time? That worst time in your life? Yeah.
No, it definitely. I remember. Look at you, and this is the moment from the image here where she's like, it's the thing.
It's you, locker girl.
My favorite superhero, locker girl. Let's see here. Vale says, no, I'm almost positive you are the mental girl who got abused so badly she went insane. Waves dramatically. Hi. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Charlotte goes from surprised, revelation, and happy from being saved to fearful and apologetic. Taylor kind of flips out on her and starts accusing Charlotte of being someone who spread rumors about her without really knowing anything about Charlotte. I think it's safe to say that Charlotte triggered Taylor by bringing up Winslow High, then fully set her off when she didn't take the conversational off-ramp that Taylor was giving her. She's crumpling under the weight of her savior from a minute ago turning on her. Taylor mentally acknowledges that she should feel bad as she sees tears in Charlotte's eyes. But, should feel bad. Charlotte is trying to form an explanation, but about Emma Barnes when Brooks comes back saying that they've found Bryce. Taylor almost spends a minute or time pushing the subject with Charlotte, then decides to get moving instead. And Lisa tells Charlotte she can come with them if Locker Girl decides she can tag along. When Charlotte starts pleading with Taylor, she sighs and lets her come. Brooks drops a comment and Taylor basically says that he sucks. Then he's like, I don't know, I don't like saving scrubs who can't take care of themselves in a fight. And Lisa's just like, all right, just doesn't matter, shut up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if the boss is fine with it, you should be fine with it. Basically, I think is the gist there.
Yeah. Val says, labels are a big deal. The Locker Girl as a label had to hit as hard as anything could possibly hit. I guess. I think that she'd be more upset by other things. Locker Girl is obviously not great, though. This back and forth is confusing Charlotte, but when she asks what's going on, Taylor says, just shut up and keep up. Then the group sets off to find Jaw and Brooks to find Jaw with Brooks leading the way. While they move, Lisa says that she'll do the talking and Taylor agrees. After a bit, they get to where Jaw is locking down Bryce with his presence and bigness, and Taylor realizes that there's no one coercing Bryce and comes to the correct conclusion that he's actually joined the merchants. Jaw confirms he has the right person with Lisa, and she starts in on him with some verbal attacks. Vale says, what would upset her more? I'm curious. I think that a compromise to her own ethics would, in some way, or an implication that she had compromised ethics, is more injurious to her person than the actual specific details of the locker incident.
Mm.
Because Taylor's very, she has to be convinced of the goodness of her actions to a certain degree. It's very important to her self-image, etc. That's what I think. What label would imply that in a way that could hit hard?
Channel the bully. What would hurt
Traitor.
Taylor the most?
Yeah. I think that her being called a traitor by like Brian and Lisa at the same time would be the most painful thing.
Sure, but in terms of what like
Traitor.
Charlotte can say to her,
Mm-hmm.
this is pretty up there.
Yeah. I'm not saying that this isn't big. I just don't think it's like the top possible. I think that you can design some fairly injurious remarks. You gotta craft them. But anyway, so where was I? Bryce is easily baited into spilling his story to Lisa when he complains about how he had been doing more chores than the rest of his life combined and staying with boring families. Jaw's like, poor baby. And Bryce is easily shamed by this, but he goes on with his story. Taylor doesn't. Taylor doesn't really know what to do in this situation and just thinks, fuck. Well, Lisa continues her sort of line of attack. She starts lying and saying that Charlotte was put in the hospital by the attack on the church. And
you mean Sierra?
Sierra. I did mean Sierra. Sierra. You know, his sister. She starts lying and saying that Sierra was put in the hospital by the attack on the church. And right then, they're cut off as Skidmark starts talking over the loudspeakers. All the music turning off as he begins talking to kick off the event. He's got a very crass way of speaking, so I'm sure that Greg has quoted him more than I, which is 0%. I've included 0 Skidmark quotes because I just like, wow, if I could live my whole life without hearing that again, I probably would. Get out of here,
I have
Skidmark.
exactly one of his lines. Oh no, 2 in the next chapter. So
an infinite percent increase.
Fair enough. Yeah, usually there's better ways to say whatever he's saying.
Yeah.
But
yeah, he's a real dumb motherfucker.
He certainly sets the tone.
Yes. He's a real piece of shit, and he leans into it because he knows it, and he loves it. And the merchants throughout the mall, they're cheering, they're loving it. They're all looking up at the big platform, which has the actual powered members of the merchants. It seems to be like a haphazardly welded together, like, metal platform. It's unclear to me how high up it is, but Skidmark's costume is bad. It's like a blue skin-tight suit, and he has a dumb cape. His girlfriend is like Squealer, who's a tinker who makes really loud, like, Squealer's like the opposite of Armsmaster, who makes like efficiency stuff. She makes like overbuilt everything, anti-efficiency, and then
I mean, she's no big rig, but she builds big cars.
Yeah, she builds large-size vehicles. We see her make a boat and a helicopter in the book, but
Vic says, I've never been able to imagine how Squealer's outfit could possibly be more risque than being naked. Oh, she found a way.
I get it. It's like those micro bikinis that just like pull really taut on like the essentially nothing skin that they do cover up. I know what they're talking about. Um uh but let's see here. Ah, yeah. So yeah, then there's the third most important merchant, Mush. You know, imposing cape, Mush.
Yeah, your real Philly. I think actually maybe he's got the thing going on where the wards were like, yeah, you can't be beaten by someone with a name like Bug because then you'll feel embarrassed. If you get beaten by Mush, ugh, that just goes
Yeah,
on your record.
your
You lost
reputation
to
is
Mush.
over. You're just done. Yeah. But Trainwreck is there in the background, and Taylor isn't sure if he still works for Coil undercover as a merchant or just joined them for real. Lisa mentions that they've been recruiting, and Taylor spots what she counts as 5 capes that she's never heard of, aside from the 4 that we mentioned. So they've got 9 dudes already.
Mm.
Skidmark starts using his power, which is like zone of acceleration power that he can sort of cast out into an area, and he forms a big square by layering his power over and over again in the 4 different spots, and it launches tons and tons of people into the middle. Unclear how many, but a whole boatload. And the other merchants like push as many people as they can in. Which, you gotta think, if you're close enough to push somebody in, you're close enough to get pushed in. So it seems
Sure.
like a really, like, I mean, even as far as childish, random, dumb, bad things to do, like, pretty stupid. Uh,
I think Taylor mentions next chapter that there had been about 80 people by the end total in the ring.
okay. Um, I guess I
So
must have
there's fewer people at the
misremembered.
start, but more people like jumping as it goes along.
Yeah. I guess you're right. I had misremembered it. I had mixed it up and thought there were 80 people at the start and then more people later rather than the other way around. But that being corrected, we've got Skidmark offering the prize to the 5 people who are the last 5 standing. And the prize is it's potions. It's
Oh no,
power
you're
potions.
right. You're right. She said there had been at least 80 people in the ring at the beginning, and still more had joined the fight afterwards,
Ah, yes,
one
okay.
way or another.
Yeah. Um So yeah, I mean, we've heard of Cauldron before, and we've heard of powers from Bottle before. We know that Coil did that, but now we're seeing, at least from Skidmark's claim, these power vials like real and in front of us.
Yeah, I suppose the real amazing part is that Skidmark has gotten his hands on them. I mean, that's some real OPSEC failure on Cauldron's part.
Yeah, it's ironically close to another situation that happens at a different point in the story.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of basically the end of the chapter. But he's just promising them these things, and he makes all the people in the center fight like ants. He's like shaking the ant farm to get them all pissed off, and they have to rebuild their tunnels. I mean, fight or whatever. Um, yeah. Final chapter thoughts. There's enough water imagery as well as a direct mention of Leviathan that the chapter ties pretty well into the motifs around this all being magnified post-disaster consequences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit in the themes, where um, the disaster of Leviathan hitting the city is still echoing very strongly in all the things that are happening here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And like they describe, he does like a thing, Wildbow, when it's I don't know. Maybe all the time, but it seems like it mostly comes up when there's like Leviathan or other reasons to have water imagery. But it's like a tide of people. In this, it's they use that same word like they did in 8.1.
Mm-hmm.
So it always feels a little like, I mean, it could just be random, but I'm gonna give them the credit. I don't care.
Fair enough.
Do you got more final chapter thoughts?
No, I don't think so. I think we're fine to just move on to 11.6.
Cool.
We start off with Taylor being shook by Skidmark's claim.
Oh, sorry. I just accidentally clicked on the back window. Is he for real? I looked at Lisa for an answer. Can they do that? Don't think he's lying.
I mean, to be fair, Skidmark seems like the kind of person who would buy a quack potion and make outlandish claims. He doesn't have to be lying to be wrong, though of course we know that such things actually do exist.
Yeah, it's weird how sensible of a choice he makes later when he's like, "Don't drink half of it."
Yeah, you'd think he'd be into weird drug experimentation. That seems to be his jam.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Anyways, they don't have time to dwell on it because the fight is starting to kick into high gear. Inside the ring, weapons are coming out, groups of friends are clustering up for mutual defense. Taylor sees one of the loners try to pair up with another loner, who immediately turns traitor, and then is quickly taken out by a group. You know, merchant's gonna merchant.
Yeah, they're not like the brightest bunch. There's in a 5 people win scenario, there is no reasonable reason to attack. Like, haha, I've tricked the one person. Like, but they're
One
not.
person willing to ally with me.
They're not operating on a very high level.
No, no, they really aren't. And outside the ring, some enterprising bystanders realize that if they toss junk into Skidmark's power, it shotguns it into the contestants. The combatants, rather, even. This sparks some fighting outside the ring as well, which is Lisa's cue.
We should go, Lisa said. She turned to Jaw and ordered, "Bring the boy." Jaw grabbed Bryce by the shirt and hauled him to his feet.
A gun goes off, sparking even more violence and chaos. And above it all, Skidmark is grinning, reveling in the madness.
The girl who had been on the bench with Bryce ran for the thick of the melee surrounding the ring. She was shouting, almost screeching, "Thomas! Mom!"
Bryce tries to chase after and is initially stopped by Jaw, but a nearby brawl forces Lisa's group to back up, and Bryce manages to slip away in the chaos. Taylor, Miner, and Brooks give chase, but they are not able to stop Bryce from reuniting with his girlfriend and making a very poor decision.
The man beckoned with a wave of his arm, and Bryce and his girlfriend ran, dropping to the ground as they touched the border of the ring. "No!" I shouted as the effect of Skidmark's power sent them careening into the ongoing free-for-all. My voice was lost in the cacophony of screaming, shouting, hollering crowd.
No! No!
Exactly.
Yeah, it was actually at this point, I hadn't really thought about it before, but having read a bit of Ward recently, I realized, hey, there's a Bryce in Ward as well, who is also the younger brother of a more important character, and who also sort of gets drawn into the mentality of a shitty gang. And it just made me wonder if there's some sort of association Wildbow has with this name in particular, or...
Wait, who's the Bryce in Ward other than literally this same character?
Oh, is it literally the same character? No, it's not. No, Aaron's younger brother, Bryce.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Aaron's younger brother is also named Bryce. I forgot that. This literal Bryce also shows up in Ward.
Ah, okay.
So he's on the roof with a fucking rocket launcher waiting for somebody. So
no, there's another Bryce, and who is in a remarkably similar situation, really.
Yeah.
Although younger and not quite as throwing himself into it.
There aren't that many same names. I can think of, with this one, it's the 2 Bryces, the 2 Chris's, which Kid Win is Chris, and then the 2 Erics. And it's like, those are the only 3 that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of real life, I suppose it's unusual to have semi-distinct names, but in terms of fiction, you definitely usually keep all those names separate, especially if they're going to be in any sort of closeness to each other in the story. Like if you're going to mention them anywhere nearby, just to avoid confusion in your readers.
Yeah. I had never really thought about what you were saying, though, because for some reason my brain had just... like I blank out the name of Aaron's younger brother. It's just that little kid. Um, I guess
Yeah, that little shit.
I'm a lot like Victoria, where my brain doesn't record non-parahumans for shit. I'm just like, oh, the lawyer, whatever her name was.
No, those people, they're hardly important.
Yeah. Um,
Anyways.
moving on.
Anyways, Sierra's dumb brother, his girlfriend, and a few others gather together in the ring.
They were soon lost in the jumble of people that were all punching, kicking, and strangling one another, spurred on by adrenaline, self-preservation, alcohol, stimulants, and greed.
A good combination. Taylor backs off. She discreetly asks Lisa whether she should use her bugs. I actually like this little beat quite a lot. Taylor asks half a question, so the soldiers and the rescued girl, who we know as Charlotte in just a moment, don't know what she's asking, and she relies upon Lisa's power filling in the blanks.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those cool little things that you can only do with Lisa around.
Yeah. No. The moment an enemy makes their presence known, Skidmark might try to break this up and send the crowd after any unfamiliar faces. Not saying they'd get us, but they could, and there'd be other victims too.
Yeah, gonna read the chat a little bit.
Yep.
Vale says, and they also are operating on a very high level. Bad joke. And then now we need to find a third Bryce for a 3-bet. Oh well, if we get a third Parahuman story, you never know. That could be the third Bryce.
Oh my god. What if
and
all three Bryces met in a room? We'd be doomed.
Yeah, it'd be Tri-Bryce.
Yeah.
When you say the lawyer, you mean the poorly dressed civilian, right?
Yeah, that terrible dresser.
Yeah.
She just doesn't know how to take care of herself. Oh, that little kid. I mean, adult lawyer.
Let's see.
I think here.
1 second. Yes, right there. Charlotte, her name is Charlotte, by the way. William had mentioned that, but we actually don't know until this exact moment in the chapter.
It was just getting hard to write around not knowing her name.
That's fair. Yeah. It's just it's also, I guess, sort of surprising that they rescue this girl and go around with her for quite a while, and then only at this moment, they're like, oh, what's your name again? She's like, I'm Charlotte.
The girl?
Exactly. She asks why they can't just run. Lisa defers to Taylor, who takes a moment to take stock. Lisa can't make any big moves with her power in this environment. The soldiers are effective combatants, but there are a lot of merchants, and using their guns would draw unwanted attention. Lisa just warned Taylor against using her own power, so finally Taylor decides.
We hold our ground, I told Lisa, until things get bad enough that we're at risk. We wait for the fight to end, we see if we can find him, and we make our exit. Sticking around also means we can get more info on what Skidmark's got in those vials, where he got them. Okay, Lisa confirmed. That works.
The soldiers form up around Taylor, Lisa, and Charlotte, but they have to endure a never-ending onslaught of merchants who want their stuff or their selves. Some of the merchants throw stuff or look just out of reach, ready for any opening or distraction. Taylor has knives to defend herself, but she can't avoid being injured several times. And I think we have some new art. So it's desperate, but it's working. Until suddenly,
I was somewhere else. It was like remembering something profound that I'd forgotten. I'd seen this before. Huge creatures filled my perception.
Taylor has a vision of two vast, multidimensional creatures flowing through space, spiraling around each other in a double helix. As they move, they shed tissue or energy, leaving the impression of a wake of sand behind them.
When they were too far away to see one another, they communicated, and each message was enormous and violent in scope, expressed with the energy of a star going supernova. One word, one idea for each message. Destination. Agreement. Trajectory. Agreement.
A whole lot of agreeing going on here. Taylor reels from the vision and is caught off guard as a merchant charges her. He strikes her, the blow bringing her partway back to reality.
Well, Greg, you know what they say. Always agree.
Yes, I've heard that.
Vale says, please post the entity's art on Discord, question mark. I have a friend who asked me if I had any. I didn't. I'd like to share this. We shall do our best. I'll get to that image to you at some point. But what was it? The shift from what I had seen to relative normalcy was so drastic that I could barely grasp what I was sensing. I opened my mouth to say something, and then it closed. I couldn't unfocus or take in the scene as a whole. As the entirety of my attention was geared for seeing, what had I been looking at? It escaped me as I tried to remember.
The merchant bends down to pick up one of Taylor's knives. Her life was on the line, but she could barely focus. She notices Lisa slumped over, also out of commission, and sees the soldiers being overrun. The press is too much. They're being overwhelmed. She closes her eyes and reaches for her power. Taylor finds that it grounds her. It is more solid than her own woozy senses. It helps that the merchants have such poor hygiene. Lice and flies are everywhere. She resists the urge to gather a swarm, at least where anyone can see it, and instead focuses on using her bugs to track people. She defends herself against the merchant, eyes closed, which is, frankly, pretty badass.
Yeah, she's going like she's martial arts blind master, and she's knife fighting with her eyes closed. It's indeed dope.
Yeah. And you know that Taylor could even catch a fly with chopsticks really easily.
Yeah, I mean, there's no one better.
Really. She managed to defeat the miscreant with help from Senegal, but makes the mistake of opening her eyes afterwards and is immediately hit with a new wave of nausea. Charlotte catches her, but that's not all she's caught. She's noticed that Skidmark and the other powered members of the merchants all slumped over at the same time as Taylor and Lisa, and has put two and two together.
Skidmark grabbed his microphone and broke into laughter, the nasty chuckles echoing through the area. Seems like one of you ass strips has earned his stripes, he cackled. I saw a flash of white from within the ring, and it dawned on me what had just happened.
Apologies for making you read Skidmark lines.
Well, these things happen.
Yep. A boy inside the ring has triggered.
But what had happened to Skidmark's group? Tattletale and I could vaguely remember something, thought about trying to put it into words, as describing it could help call it to mind in a way that I could describe it, but they disappeared as I reached for them. I was reminded of Imp's power. Before I could get a handle on it, I'd forgotten entirely, and I was struggling to even remember what I was trying to do, my thoughts muddling the idea of it with my attempts to get my bearings.
Don't worry, Taylor. It's probably not important anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, she notices that Lisa is still slumped over and hurries to her side. Lisa is lost in the sauce.
They're like viruses, she said. Her voice was thin, as if she was talking to herself. And babies. And gods. All at the same time.
Lisa seems to be on the verge of a revelation, but Taylor interrupts.
I slapped her lightly across the face. Lisa, I need you to come back to reality, not go further into your delirium.
Oh yeah, definitely not important. I'm certain that Lisa wasn't on the verge of discovering some secret about the world, which is of vast and cosmic importance.
You know,
anyways,
I don't think that it's Taylor that stopped. I don't think she could have connected the dots, really gotten any further. I think actually this
maybe
because this might have helped her unfocus on it. Because if you focus on it, you forget faster.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that can help her bridge that gap is if someone draws her attention to it, which is, spoilers, what eventually happens. But
even when her attention is drawn to it later, literally moments after she takes her eyes off of it, she's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, but then if you keep drawing her attention to it, she's able to sort of slip past that block with her power.
Yeah, I don't want to blame Taylor here. I don't think that she could have made the... Anyway.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not gonna blame Taylor, but it feels to me like this was a moment where the story could have really turned a different direction if things had gone even slightly differently.
Yeah. Vic makes a good point. But yeah, if she kept talking, Taylor could have remembered what she says about them. Common Taylor L. Yeah.
Taylor being drawn into the moment.
A common woodland Taylor.
Yep.
Anyway.
It looks like they might get drawn into more fighting, but Skidmark shouts into his microphone for it all to stop. There are only 5 left in the ring. The number injured and dead is staggering.
Yeah.
Skidmark dismisses the ring and calls the boy who triggered up to the stage.
You're gonna need a name, kid, if you're gonna join the merchant's upper circle. It's not the inner circle, it's the upper one.
Yeah, well, because they're on the upper stage. You don't want to be inner, you want to be upper.
Yeah.
They're like uppers.
True.
The boy offers the name Eraser, which is actually a pretty good name. So, of course, Skidmark shoots it down and names him Scrub instead, which is awful. Skidmark is just the worst.
How in the hell was Scrub better than Eraser? In what insane reality?
Yeah, Taylor knows what's up. There are 5 left in the ring, but only 4 who need powers. Skidmark tells Scrub, to choose who gets the 5th, and he has to choose between 2 of his close friends. But while all this is happening, Taylor notices that groups of her bugs on the roof are being stunned. She recognizes the feeling. Hey there, Neuter. Faultline's crew has arrived to crash the party, and Taylor decides it's time to go before there's trouble. But it's too late. The moment they reach a fire door, which I assume is a door that's on fire,
Of
the handle
course.
disappears, and all the exits melt away under the influence of Labyrinth's power.
Well, that's why the exits melt away, because they were on fire.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to go into the fire escape, because that's also on fire.
Vic says, bad name, but Scrub is worse. Fire door?
Eraser is fine. Like, I'm certain you can do better, but like, when you're on the spot after this like traumatic event, like he comes up with a decent name.
Yeah, and he comes up with it in like seconds, so it's...
Mm-hmm. And as I said in the audience listen earlier, I appreciate the merchants who are, as a group, single-handedly keeping Kid Win from being the worst name hero, or worst name parahuman in the city.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got Mush, and you got Scrub, and you got Skidmark and Squealer. Kid Win seems like a paragon of naming virtue next to them.
Kid Nim, and you're themed after The Secret of Nim.
Yeah.
Vic says, honestly, I would probably rather be Scrub than Eraser. Eraser is Chugi. Okay. I guess I don't see the connection why Eraser is Chugi, but I will take your word for it.
If you want, I will call you Scrub.
Yeah, Vic, you can be Scrub. So anyway. So final chapter thoughts on this one. I don't want no Scrubs.
This chapter. Yeah.
Scrubtoria. Scrub. Why? Oh, I see. You wrote Scrubtoria the first time. Good job.
Ignorant Scrub.
Yeah, it's another ship where Victoria Dallin goes out with Scrub, and where Vic Duff goes out with Scrub.
So, at the same time, it's very impressive.
Yeah, I mean they're like both real and not real at the same time. It's fan fiction logic. So we didn't really discuss the art, but you could see them spiral helixing around each other. Yeah, I mean there's kind of like a maybe a gold and white theme going on here for like 2 different ones.
Yeah, I mean Taylor describes them as
the entities are kissing. It's official. Vic said so about this art.
It's true. I mean they separated out, but that's only so they can come back together again later and really make out.
Yeah. Well, this is them in the tight spiral, I think, when they're really getting kissy.
Ooh.
So.
Multi-dimensional kissing.
Yeah. They gotta, angle it right, but multi-angle.
Yeah, you want to knock your noses together. They have that problem, but in like 15 dimensions at once. It's a big problem.
Bill says, "Wait, what is this show rated?" This show is rated not for kids on YouTube. There's two main ratings. There's all ages. Well, actually, I think it's just like kids and not for kids, and then I think there is a third rating where it's actually filtered out. But so we're the middle rating. We're the PG-13 of YouTube.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think Worm itself, I think PG-13 is generally fair. It does get into some pretty dark places, but I think it's appropriate for ye teens.
Yeah, yeah. YA to the max. I think this is a really good fight chapter. It's cool how she blind fights. We'd never seen her do that before, and she does several. Whenever she's building up new moves, like she's building up the use the bugs as your senses in a fist fight thing that she will casually use for the entire rest of the book. Because when you can exactly gauge how far away someone's arms and legs are without like any guessing going on with your brain, then that's a gigantic advantage, and you can perfectly sense when they're doing a trick.
I do think it actually helps her also with her own body sense as well. On top of that,
like
people have about five senses. You actually have a lot more of that than those five people typically talk about, and one of them is a sense of where your limbs are, or where your sort of body is in relation to itself. But I think that here we get to see that even when she is nauseous, disoriented, her senses are scrambled, she's able to sort of focus on the bugs and use them as a replacement for that normal perception.
And yeah, she doesn't need a sense of balance either.
Body.
Because that's another one of the extra numbered senses that she normally you need both of those senses to be able to stand at all, but she doesn't. So
like all the other, pretty much everyone else who's affected by this vision falls over, and Taylor does for a little bit, but she gets up way quicker than anyone else.
She's got workarounds for tons of problems that other people don't. And if she's mostly knocked out, her power will still run because it's so combination passive and automatic. She
can sort of set and forget.
Yeah, she'll mentally guide it, but if she's not giving any input and it's you're in danger, then it just starts fucking doing stuff.
It starts murdering people.
Yeah, pretty much. Let's see here. I think we can move on to the arc stuff. Good middle chapters. Again, this is a weird arc since it's split into two, but I'm kind of just treating the 8 chapters as their own thing. It is escalating the conflict, and we will get the climax of the fight next chapter when the Palanquin group, Fault Line's crew rather, they all attack at the same time, and really just, I mean, it's a really interesting fight because you don't get to see their group together much, and this is one of the only times I think in the whole thing where they're kind of on point and fighting, and it's not just one or two of them. So
yeah, actually, this fight is very interesting because it's one of the few fights in the book where Taylor has to essentially fight as a baseline human.
Yeah.
She doesn't really get to use her power in a significant way in the fight. Lisa also, it really doesn't have very much power effect in this fight. And they just sort of have to muddle through anyways, which is a fun little thing. We get to see Taylor, how she operates when she can't really fall back on her bugs to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah, and actually, I guess sort of transitioning into the characters section, this is something I had thought about a long while ago about the difference between Taylor and Lisa. I think that Lisa's power is just as useful as the way Taylor is using her power right now in a knife fight, or maybe even more, because she's got a lot of perception going on. But given the type of person she is, she would never lower herself to that. She's not going to pull out a knife and fight. She stops a guy from stabbing Minor, but if she was more like Taylor in this moment, I really do think that she'd have a knife in each hand and be going ballistic.
I do think that I think there's two components to that. One is that you're right that Lisa has a different mentality than Taylor. She is less about the personal, like, physicalness of it. But I also think that though her power could be useful in a fight, it can also distract her. It's sort of
Hmm.
throwing a bunch of details at her, some of which are not going to necessarily be relevant to the ongoing fight, and that might hinder as much as it helps.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a good point. Um, because it's like an overload. Yeah.
Yeah, and she sort of has to focus to turn it off as well, which is not really something you can stop and do in the middle of a combat.
Vale makes a good point. Lisa's power is wrong sometimes, also, and Taylor's isn't.
That's true. Yeah, it could be like he's going for a right hook, and you're like, "Oops, didn't have complete information yet."
Yeah. Um, let's see here.
Also, I think that unlike some other thinker we see later, it doesn't immediately allow her to translate the things she knows into physical actions. Like she might know that they're going for a right hook, but then what do you do about it, really? If you can't react fast enough, it's not going to matter because it bonks you in the jaw and now you're in trouble.
You make a good point. I hadn't thought about that before. I had mostly thought about it in terms of the differences in their like the way they interact with the world.
Mm-hmm.
But to
I mean,
grab
I think we see a little bit of that in the interlude where we see Lisa joining the Undersiders,
right,
where she fights, or at least she gets whacked by one of Coyle's goons masquerading as an enforcer on the boardwalk, and he basically takes her apart. Right, she doesn't really have any chance, even though she's like, he he's about to attack me, and she's not able to do anything about it really.
yeah, you're
But on the
right.
other hand, I think it might be something that she'd be able to train a bit for, and she just doesn't have the mentality where she really feels like she should.
Mm-hmm. It's not kind of worth in her mind. It's not worth her time that she could be spending on other things. To a
And you know what?
certain
I
extent.
I mostly agree with her on that. So
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say like I generally think that like her time is better spent elsewhere than learning how to fist fight, but she should do a little. I think she should do like a primer with Gru.
yeah, Bill says, well, I'm gonna read this last part first. Fist hits jaw. Fist hitting jaw hurts. Fist hitting jaw hurt a lot. Jaw swelling. Swelling jaw looks weird. Lisa before she trains the power for combat. Yeah, you start feeding her a bunch of details about like, oh, here's the effect that getting socked in the jaw will have on your face. She's like, no, stop. Not useful.
Yeah. Um, I think we can move to this little bit. You want to read the little sections you
Yeah,
wrote? Hmm.
because I think we get a lot of Taylor in all chapters. Of course, this is a book primarily by Taylor, but in this chapter in particular, we get Lisa telling her, "You've got a little superhero showing through there."
Yeah.
And this whole expedition is more than a little superhero. Um, she's getting to help a person who should have been in her territory find her brother, and she goes to pretty extreme lengths to help Sierra and now Charlotte here in the mall.
Yeah, she does. Um, and I don't know. It's a little weird that Lisa would call her out in that way because it's like, yes,
Yes, you think you would have noticed that before now, Lisa. Um, I think it's just that maybe part of it is if they had been just a little bit faster, even just like a little bit faster in grabbing Price, they probably could have gotten out of Dodge before things got really rough.
On the other hand, they wouldn't have seen all the important info, which is Lisa's excuse for going there in the first place.
That's true. Yeah, what we see here is really important because Taylor, at least, and I think Lisa neither has seen cauldron vials and even suspected perhaps that they're possible because it's a pretty world-shaking change here, a world-shaking bit of
Yeah, I think
knowledge.
this is the first time, like, by the end of this arc, is the first time that Taylor has ever even considered the idea that people could get powers without a traditional trigger event.
Mm-hmm.
So, Vale says it would be really funny if Taylor was wearing her Arms Master undies and Lisa was being literal. Um, my God. Luckily, as a teen, she no longer has those.
Yes.
So you had a little written about Charlotte. There's not so much
Yeah,
about
not
her
too much,
because she's kind
because
of the.
she's the main focus of the audience participation question. So I don't really have that much to say about her right here, other than just mention that she's a Winslow High student. She knows of Taylor. I
Mm-hmm.
guess Taylor made a bit of a splash at school, so it's not
Indeed.
that surprising. But she
Mm-hmm.
manages to pick her out, even though she has made the superhero, even Superman, effort of not wearing glasses.
Indeed, she's very Clark Kent-esque, and unlike Clark Kent, she's instantly recognized.
Yes.
You're just the same person without glasses.
It takes her like a few seconds. And you're like, wait a second, you're that locker girl. Yeah, yeah. You're that Clark Kent guy.
You're really famous, and you work at a newspaper, and like you take pictures of yourself.
Yeah, I see you all the time.
Anyway. So Scrub and the trigger events. I guess trigger events first.
Yeah. Well, I put that first because it happened first. We don't have to talk
Yes.
about it first necessarily. But we had seen a trigger vision before, of course, in Miss Militia's interlude. Although I think in her interlude she actually only sees like one entity.
Well,
And in
yeah, I
here,
think it's different every trigger event, and this is the first time they talk about there being two.
mhm, there are some definite similarities, though. They both get that sort of multi-dimensional, almost indescribably large sense. They both get that like very distinct sense. This thing is definitely alive. It's not like some sort of machine or anything like that. It's a big, living, crazy creature.
I also
And they
always
both
get the
get the
sense
sense.
whenever I'm like listening to it, it's like I'm in the void. It doesn't feel like
Yeah,
it has any place to it because it's
yeah.
so big.
You're in the void, and you're staring up at the king of all cosmos, and
Mm,
he looks really weird. But what you gonna do?
yeah. Yeah, and we'll see
Uh,
a couple more of these later, but like did you have more like comparisons
Yeah,
or
I was going to
yeah.
say another similarity they have between the visions we've seen is they both get the impression of it like shedding, or I think Miss Melissa says it's injured and it's like bleeding essentially all over the place, whereas Taylor gets more the impression that they're sort of like tossing energy as they sort of move along.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but we do get some new stuff here. I mean, we do get the Taylor's like, hey, there's two of them, and they're like spiraling around each other, and they're busy talking to each other with big supernova text messages.
Mhm. They're wasting a lot of energy with these texts. Um
Look, I get it. You gotta like you're shouting all the way across like a bunch of dimensions at each other.
mhm. Yeah,
You, you can't make an omelet without blowing up a few stars.
a lot of them. Uh, but yeah, so I don't want to get too much into it cuz like obviously you and I know quite a bit more than is featured in these chapters,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really compelling stuff on the first read, I think. Um
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that you look at and you're like, well, this is terribly mysterious, and I'm not exactly certain what to make of it, but this is probably important.
mhm. Mhm. And like the fact that it's the second one we've seen and it's so different than the first one we saw means that we're going to get more pieces of information. It's not going to be like every time we see a trigger vision, we just get like essentially the same thing. Like all of them
Yeah,
are like, I don't know, have a lot of new stuff each time.
yeah. Another one of the new bits is we actually get to see someone essentially forgetting it, because in Miss Militia's chapter, she had mentioned how she's sort of the rare oddity who remembers this stuff, whereas everyone she talks to uh, has no idea what she's talking about, pretty much. We get to see
Yeah.
here Taylor and Lisa sort of having this huge sort of cosmic vision, and then sort of it dropping out of their mind's eye. Like Taylor describes it as if it feels a lot like Imp using her power, where it's just sort of you see it and you blink and now you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And see what? I don't remember anything. Imp? Who's that?
Yeah, and it's new information that someone would get a sympathetic trigger vision when
Oh
somebody else has
yeah.
a trigger event. So like that's something that we wouldn't have known about until now, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Miss Militia remembers her own trigger event, but she doesn't recall anyone else's. Which I guess is maybe a little bit surprising. I guess she hasn't been around anyone else triggering that she recalls.
I think even for a parahuman, it's very rare to be around someone when they're having a trigger event.
I guess maybe. I feel like parahumans are more likely to be in the sort of stressful situations that would cause someone else to trigger.
Yeah.
Like, especially when you're a hero, you're throwing yourself deliberately into these high risk situations where people are in desperate bodily harm
Well, maybe
or
a
in the
lot
way
of the
of desperate bodily
time,
harm.
it feels like there's an out for the person in having a hero trying to rescue them that they wouldn't feel like they wouldn't be able to be pushed to the point of having the trigger event if they felt like there was hope of being saved or something.
Sure, but I mean, a lot of situations are, while situations that some people get saved from, we just saw the city get attacked by an Endbringer. Miss Militia, I imagine, attends a fair number of Endbringer attacks. She's been a hero for a while, and a decently powerful one, too. Even though, like, scratching Leviathan was obviously a bit beyond her power.
Yeah.
Um,
I think if they had a trigger event happen in the middle of the heroes in an Endbringer fight, that'd be a
oh, yeah,
fucking
what a
disaster.
disaster. Jeez.
Because everyone would fall over and all those force fields would go out and stuff.
Yeah, a bunch of flyers fall out of the air. Ugh, jeez.
Yeah. Anyway, it's something to think about. But
Yeah.
Scrub's power, I think we can jump down to.
Yeah, he's the boy who creates semi-random blips all around him that just erase stuff. Thus the name Eraser, and totally not Scrub.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What an eraser. Um.
Yeah, it seems like a bit of a shitty power. I mean, it's one of those things where if your power is only semi-controlled, it can be a huge handful because his power is pretty destructive. Like he's just taking chunks out of everything around him all the
Mm-hmm.
time.
Yeah.
And he can't really control it. He can sort of like point in the general direction, but it just sort of keeps going.
Yeah. It's one of those major downside powers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for the bonus section, I actually had thought of something earlier. I didn't write it down, but it was just basically like come up with the underside or other cape names, but the undersiders cape names if they had shitty merchants names. And I decided
Oh God.
that for bitch, the name would still just be bitch. Um,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
uh, for Gru, I hate to say it, but perhaps something racially insensitive about
I
darkness.
was thinking something like Stain.
Stain, that makes sense. And then for Regent,
He would have probably a really terrible name like Mindfuck or something. I don't know.
yeah, he's fuck up because he makes you fuck up.
Oh no, I like it. Yeah.
And then we've got Skitter, definitely Maggot is the one I thought of first, but I'm sure there's a lot of like there's Cockroach or like Dung Beetle. There's lots of ones.
I
We,
funnily I think Skitter's one of the names that would work in the merchants anyways.
huh,
They
hmm.
got sort of an S theme going on with the leaders with like
Squealer,
Skidmark and
Skidmark,
Squealer.
Skitter.
You can imagine Skitter being in there.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them, of course. You got like Mushes and Trainwrecks and whatnot, but you could see it. I think Skitter could fit with her OG name.
What would Tattletale be? Tattletale would be,
Oh. Hmm.
huh?
Yeah, a little bit tougher.
See, because her power is not as direct, and the merchants are kind of very obtuse in their naming scheme.
Yeah, I mean, at least you can say for them, a lot of their names do have sort of double meanings.
Mm-hmm.
Like both Skidmark, which is, like, hey, it's skid marks in your fucking underwear, but also he creates marks on the ground that make you skid around. And Squealer has a double meaning too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Thinking on Tattletale, huh?
Yeah.
Fails so Squealer would get named Locker Girl. Ugh. And Regent would be Dork. Ironic turn of tables. I think Dork is hilariously maybe too nice of a name for the merchants.
Yeah. Well, our bonus can be in our hearts that someday we'll come up with Tattletale's terrible merchant's name.
Yeah, or imps.
Or imps. I don't have one for imp. All the ones I keep thinking of for imp are too like I come up with something like "Forget Me Now," which I mean, while that is a reference to a Joe Bluth line about him trying to rupee people, it's still too classy for the merchants because it's just a little too wordplay, I think. But anyway, moving on to the audience participation question, which I will look at the Discord for.
Go for
Um,
it.
we have discussed Taylor's interactions with Charlotte. Um, ba 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 ba. Bleep blorp. Okay, so we just got Vale's answer. The "You're the locker girl" line from the start of their talk just gets to me. It hurts to read every time because it's always relevant and awful and burdensome to Taylor. In this instance, when she just did a heroic thing, she gets the label slapped across her face, so to speak. I also get where Charlotte is coming from. It is a rare person of any age who steps up to help people in need, and especially in the dynamic and environment like that school. And I also know this whole scene just sits with her for the better going forward as well, i.e., she learns a bit about herself, stepping up to help others, and personal trauma at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, like that answer. Quite a lot. I think what I'd sort of add to it is that, from my point of view, Charlotte is in a very emotionally vulnerable state, especially in 11.5. Uh, like she thought she was in a essentially no-win situation, and then she gets picked up and thinks she's, oh no, this has gotten way worse suddenly, and then gets dropped into the realization that she's fine. So I think she's mostly sort of babbling and saying like whatever comes to her mind, which ends up being very hurtful to Taylor.
Yeah.
And one of the takeaways I think was most interesting from that was Taylor starts to and then almost completely drops into sort of that black and white mentality where she puts people into the bully box, being like, you're one of them. You're one of the bad people. But she manages in this instance to pull back and actually uh, help Charlotte. Whereas normally when she gets people into that box, she's like, nah, fuck you. It's over.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you have more stuff to say, definitely go for it. I don't have like a lot to say that we didn't kind of cover in our summaries, so.
I guess the only thing on top of that I'd mention is we get to see that Charlotte, she's a person in a desperate situation, but she is very observant, right? She recognizes Taylor right off the bat. And then in 11.6, when the trigger event happens, she very quickly puts together exactly what's happened and that both Taylor and Lisa are also parahumans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. She definitely notices more than most because it doesn't seem like their group gets much increased scrutiny after the trigger event, even though Charlotte noticed it.
Yeah, most people around them, I'm not certain, they're too distracted or something like that, just from the ongoing melee to really notice.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, the bonus will have been called Name That Merchant. Um so the question for next week, 11.8, would you join Skitter if you were Charlotte slash Sierra, and I'm gonna post it now
Mm.
because otherwise I'll forget, and then Vale will post it. Or I'll post it in the general, like last time. Uh, so I'm gonna start up the outro song and so forth. If you have any final thoughts, anybody, say them now or forever hold your peace until next week.
I just want to thank folks for showing up, and Vic, as always, for the wonderful art.
Yes, thank you, thank you. I really liked these arts. I'm gonna for a moment see the Charlotte and then the space. Um,
Oh yeah.
but yeah, read the links real quick. The music used in this episode and for this arc is Suspense music, Post-apocalyptic by CO.AG Music. And it has the YouTube link in the stream description here. They do free music as long as you mention that you got it from them, so that's pretty cool. Discord server link can be found in the description and the channel description. The author of the work being discussed can be supported on patreon.com/wildbow. The full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com. And there's also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. Thanks for showing up, Vic and Vale, and 2 + 4 × 5, and goodbye, Vale. And thank you, Greg, for co-hosting.
Indeed, thank you. It's a pleasure as always.
Yay! Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.